Inside Meta's infrastructure, a deterministic search is running. It processes millions of data points in milliseconds to find a single buyer. It's a mathematical execution. Machine learning updates like Andromeda have moved targeting upstream. Because the platform now automates the selection of the audience, the creative asset itself is the sole mechanism left to signal who the product is for. This creates a friction point with traditional marketing. Most teams still rely on unstructured brainstorming, relying on the loudest voice in a room or a whiteboard covered in random ideas. Deploying random creative tactics without a specific behavioral hypothesis results in hook slop. These are assets that fail to signal the algorithm, leading to high costs and low engagement. Surviving an automated landscape requires a shift in operations. Creative strategy can no longer function as an art project. It has to be managed as an engineered system. Solving for hook slop requires a cyclical operational model, a flywheel designed to replace intuition with repeatable phases. The process begins with research inputs. We gather demographic and situational data to generate targeted hypotheses about why users stop scrolling. Those hypotheses are locked into a structural brief. These production guardrails ensure the team executes the strategy rather than personal preference. Finally, the diagnostic loop uses performance metrics to identify failures, feeding insights back to the research phase. Closing this loop forces the team to prioritize verifiable feedback over individual opinions. Strategic research must identify the exact moment a problem is triggered in a user's life. Understanding the problem as a concept is secondary to understanding the situation that makes it relevant. This structure begins with trust architectures, the foundational logic of how different demographics verify information. A baby boomer might require a doctor's endorsement to believe a health claim, while a Gen Z buyer will often ignore institutional authority entirely, placing their trust in pure-focused forums or subreddits. Moving up the stack, we find the micro-moment. This is the hyper-specific situational trigger. A demographic insight targets a 57-year-old woman who wants to lose weight. A micro-moment insight targets a 57-year-old woman feeling anxious about her genes sitting properly 5 minutes before she leaves for lunch with a thinner friend. Isolating that specific moment provides the situational reality required to write a hook that resonates with the user's immediate experience. An insight only has value if it can be translated into an executable architecture. The structural brief is where that translation happens. Every brief must contain a rigid hypothesis statement. If we show this specific context to this specific audience, then we will achieve this specific behavioral result. We apply a 5 to 7 word rule. If the core concept of the ad cannot be summarized in 7 words or less, the message is too complex to survive the speed of a social feed. The brief coordinates the hook across 3 vectors: the visual, the audio, and the underlying psychological trigger. In the Saturday morning text concept, we use silence and a slow push-in to build tension. The hook isn't the product. It's the recognizable anxiety of a work notification lighting up a phone during a quiet moment. By following a structural brief, creators are forced to solve for the hypothesis, which eliminates the subjectivity that usually stalls production. Modern media buying requires an immense volume of creative assets. For most teams, trying to generate entirely new concepts for every ad lead to burnout and rising production costs. Modular iteration allows a team to scale output without starting from zero. We treat a single video asset as a central node. By keeping the same visual base and swapping only the text overlay, you can test 3 different psychological hooks in the time it takes to export a single file. Swapping the voiceover script or using a different creator's audio further multiplies that single shoot into a library of distinct assets. You can also use creative plagiarism, systematically reverse engineering the successful structural frameworks used by brands in entirely different industries. When one video shoot can be subtupled through modular hook and audio swaps, a lean team can increase their total ad output by 700% using their existing production resources. In the diagnostic phase, we look for failures in the hypothesis. We are not just reading a dashboard. We are looking for the exact point where the ad's anatomy broke down. Looking at a single metric like click-through rate is misleading. A click doesn't explain why someone stopped or why they failed to buy. Identifying structural issues requires a diagnostic logic gate, analyzing how different metrics interact. A high thumb-stop ratio combined with a low CTR indicates the hook worked, but the product pitch or the call to action failed to convert that attention into a click. If the thumb stop is high, but the hold rate drops off immediately after the first 3 seconds, the visual thumbnail earned the stop, but the narrative failed to maintain the user's interest. When upper funnel metrics are strong, but the bottom line return is weak, the creative is functioning correctly. The issue lies with the landing page or the offer itself. Combining these metrics tells the media buyer exactly which modular variable needs to be adjusted in the next iteration. Data is only as reliable as the algorithm's confidence in it, which is signaled through spend volume. Making a decision before an asset reaches a spend threshold, typically 3 times your target cost per acquisition, leads to inaccurate conclusions. You need volume before you can trust the diagnostic loop. Once that threshold is met, the failure points identified in the loop flow back into the research phase. The data from the last test dictates the parameters of the next one. Success in this system requires a focus on getting it right through data, rather than trying to be right during the brainstorm. By adopting a deterministic behavioral engine, brands stop guessing at what might work and start manufacturing creative that scales profitably in algorithmic feeds.